Hi everyone, my name is Eileen Santos, and for the Section 3 book, I am doing it on Charlotte's Web, which is written by E.B. White and illustrated by Garth Williams. And this book is technically a children's novel, fiction children's novel, because throughout the story, the main characters of the story really are the farm animals that are seen within this book, which are the cow, the gander, sheep, goose, rooster, a rat, a spider, and the piglet, obviously. Um, and within the story, all of these animals are talking with one another and having like actual conversations, even though the adults technically don't hear it or see it. It's mainly within the animals who are the main characters of the book. The beginning of the story or the book begins with the girl right here. Her name's Fern, and her dad, Mr. Arnales. And they're having a little bit of an argument or a dispute, I guess, because her dad, Mr. Arable, wants to kill one of the piglets that was just born the day prior, because the pig was very small and very weak and would just cause troublesome for Mr. Arable in growing it, because he thinks that the piglet won't grow as much because he is very small. And this is one of the first illustrations. There's very few illustrations within this book. There's mainly words because this is a chapter book or a novel. So in this picture, we see Mr. Arable and Fern trying to decide, or not decide, but like argue between whether or not letting the piglet live or not. And then I like how this picture is all of the pictures are designed like this. All the illustrations look like this. They have more of an old vintage look to it. Throughout the whole story, we see the illustrations like that. They're more sketched out to be a little bit more on dark. It's all black and white. The only color we see is on the front and the back cover. But fast forward, Mr. Arable and Fern do decide to keep the piglet because Fern said the following. She said, "But it's unfair," cried Fern. "The pig couldn't help being born small, could it? If I had been very small at birth, would you have killed me?" Mr. Arable smiled. "Certainly not," he said, looking down at his daughter with love. "But this is different. A little girl is one thing, a little runty pig is another." "I see no difference," replied Fern, still hanging onto the axe. "This is the most terrible case of injustice I have ever heard of." And so because of this, Mr. Arable does let Fern keep the piglet. And then here we are also introduced to Avery, Fern's older brother, Mr. Arable's eldest son. There's only two of them. And he is mainly like, "Oh, why are you keeping the pig?" You know, he has very much rooted to animals staying outside and people indoors. And so he was a little bit confused because Mr. Arable let Fern keep the piglet. And so Fern is keeping the piglet. She is taking care of him, giving him breakfast, as we can see here. So she gives him breakfast every morning before school with a bottle. And she grows up with him and names him Wilbur. She takes him out and about outside like this. As you can see here, Wilbur is in the carrier. And later, as Wilbur gets bigger and bigger, he is growing, obviously, Mr. Arable decides that Wilbur can no longer be inside of the house because he is just big and he is a farm animal. And so he decides to sell Wilbur. This was a decision between Mr. Arable and Fern, but they decided to sell Wilbur to their uncle, to Fern's uncle, Mr. Zuckerman, and who owns a farm, and that farm is located down the street of Fern's house, so she is able to visit Wilbur whenever she likes. And so she does visit him. As you can see here, she visits him before and after school. And then here is where we meet all the different farm animals and some of them are pictured onto the front cover. So here we see a sheep, obviously Wilbur, this goose, and then the spider, which we later introduced in chapter 5, whose name is Charlotte. But as mentioned, some of the animals we see in the farm is a cow, a gander, sheep, goose, rooster, rats, and any other farm animals that you can think of. So slowly but surely, Wilbur is getting used to being outside in the farm. And at first, he's a little frightened and he is scared because he has never really lived inside of a farm, which is a pig's natural habitat. Um, and then he starts to meet the different animals. And one of the geese tells Wilbur that he should escape and he should easily just run out because he's a piglet and he should go back to where he wants. But um, the the animals are very, they like to play a little bit jokes on him. So the geese, all the animals actually, the cows for example, they say run downhill. The gander says run towards me. The sheep cries run uphill. The goose says turn and twist. The rooster says jump and dance. So Wilbur tries to escape, but Mr. Zuckerman and his wife and the farm employee, his name is Lucas, I believe. Lurvy. They all tried to capture Wilbur, which they essentially do. But Wilbur was just kind of stuck and tired of being inside of the farm all day because he said that there's nothing to do. And later, as he is slowly getting used to the life on the farm, he meets this rat named Templeton. And Templeton, he's been there for a while, but he's mainly underground. He is a rat. And so he tries to not associate as much with the animals, but later he finds a warm spot in his heart for Wilbur, and they build a little connection, a little friendship. And then in chapter 5, we are introduced to Charlotte, who again is the spider, who again is the title of the book. When Wilbur is laying down, Charlotte says some words, and Wilbur's a little confused, like, oh, like, where is that noise coming from? Who's saying that? Later, he finds out that this is Charlotte, and we can see right here. So we see Wilbur, and he is meeting Charlotte up here in the web, and they just slowly begin to build that connection, that friendship. Charlotte plays the role almost like the mother or caretaker of Wilbur while he is at the farm. And not all of the animals are very nice to him. They do tease him sometimes or say some things that get Wilbur a little agitated or a little nervous. For example, in this chapter titled Bad News, we are introduced to bad news, I guess. One of the sheep tells Wilbur, he says, you know why they're fattening you up, don't you? No, said Wilbur. Well, I don't like to spread bad news, said the sheep, but they're fattening you up because they're going to kill you, that's why. And at this news, Wilbur begins to freak out. He doesn't want to die like any other animal. So here we see Wilbur, and you can see the emotion within the illustrations. You can see the tears and how sad and scared he looks. And the sheep is a little like, not making it that big of a deal because the sheep is very old and has been in the barn for a very long time and has seen that every spring or so, piglets come in, pigs go out, they never return, and then new piglets come in, and so on and so forth. So we are introduced to the story where Charlotte is kind of like the role taker or protector, or even almost like a mother role to Charlotte. And so Charlotte agrees that she will try to take care of Wilbur and will protect him from getting eaten. And this is where the fun or the message comes in. So we do notice that here in Charlotte's web, there's a bunch of different spider webs, and Charlotte thought of a plan where they will make different words or phrases onto the spider web itself. And then when everybody starts seeing these words on the spider web, people begin to get surprised. And that's kind of what does happen. So here we see Charlotte building her web. And then we see words start to form onto it. So, for example, the first phrase we see is some pig. And obviously, to the adults in the story, like Mr. Zuckerman, Lurvy, who are workers on the farm, when they see this, they're super surprised, super shocked, and almost think it's a miracle. Hence, this chapter being titled "The Miracle." And so they start calling everybody, and even the minister comes. A lot of people in the town, people came from miles away to look at Wilbur and to read the words on Charlotte's web. It says the Zuckerman's driveway was full of cars and trucks from morning till night, Fords and Chevys and Buick Roadmasters and GMC pickups and Plymouths and Studebakers and Packards and basically all the cars. And so everybody was amazed by Mr. Zuckerman and Lurvy's special pig, which is Wilbur, and the spider, Charlotte. Okay, so here in this illustration, we see lots of people huddled up in the barn, awaiting just to see the message on the web. And then later, the animals realize that this is such a good idea, and they're going to continue to do this. And so they have like little meetings to try to just figure out what message they're gonna say next. And the one that they later decide on is terrific. And obviously this is fiction. Obviously a real spider wouldn't be making messages onto their spider webs. So this is very much where the fiction comes along in. And I think that could be maybe one of a weakness found within the book, because if you don't really explain this to a child, especially a younger child of like 8 or 9 years old, they might think that this is something that is real. And then, well, the older kids maybe in 6th or 7th grade reading this, they'll be able to decipher which parts of the book is real and then which parts are fiction. But one of the greater strengths that I think is pretty good within this book are the illustrations. Even though there's not that many illustrations found within the book, there is a lot of great detail when we are given those illustrations. So like in this page, for example, we see very detailed, again, the little lines in the back, they give that old vintage look. And in this scene exactly, the mother, Mrs. Arabelle, she goes to the doctor a little concerned about her daughter Fern because she is hanging out a lot with the animals, and Fern believes that the animals are talking, and the other adults don't believe that is true. Besides the point, because everybody thinks that Wilbur is such an amazing pig, and everybody from everywhere is coming to view him and see the spider web and see all these messages. When the county fair comes along, Mr. Arabelle, Fern's father, comes in and he decides to put Wilbur on like display or like a showcase even, and they title him the Magnificent Pig, which is Wilbur. And everybody comes and they get him ready here. They're giving him a bath. And yeah, they're getting him all ready for the show. And later, obviously Wilbur is much, much more bigger. And Charlotte is much, much more older. And at the beginning, they were going to slaughter Wilbur, which hence the reason why they were fattening him up. And then later, Charlotte found a plan where she will be able to save Wilbur, which is through her spider webs and making all these messages, to essentially redirect the attention of the people from Wilbur to the spider web messages, but then later also putting in Wilbur in there, so they think Wilbur is a really magnificent pig and he's really awesome and really amazing, and hence the miracle chapter title. But later, after the whole county fair is over, they return to the farm, and Charlotte at this point is very much more weak, and she does have an egg sac that she does put inside of her, or the corner of her spider web, and within that egg sac she has 514 eggs, or baby spiders. And later, after Wilbur is all saved, Charlotte passes away. She dies of oldness or of age, and her spider babies are born. And Wilbur later meets each and every single one of them, and he views how they're all growing. And even though most of them don't stay, some of them do stay, and he just builds that connection with them. And on the final chapter, or the final page of the book, it says, Wilbur never forgot Charlotte. Although he loved her children and grandchildren dearly, none of the new spiders ever quite took her place in his heart. She was in a class by herself. It is not often that someone comes along who is a true friend and a good writer. Charlotte was both. And in that part, you can kind of get the idea that this book was based off a person named Charlotte in the real world. But when we're talking about incorporating this book into the classroom, I would say incorporating something about the animals, because the animals is something that we are discussing. So I think doing a little activity where we can each research one of the animals mentioned in the book and just making like a little presentation about the farm animals. Or you can do like different stages of a pig's life, starting from piglet to adult pig, even with the spider, really, because it's one of the main characters. But I think the overall message would be friendships come with taking sacrifices for those we love dearly, and true friendships and loyalty is often very deep and life-lasting, which is something that we do see between Charlotte and Wilbur. Charlotte sacrificed essentially her whole remaining life to protect Wilbur, which she did succeed in, and Wilbur never forgot about her. Even though she did pass, he never forgot about her. He always remembered what she did for her, what she did for him, and that friendship remains even though she doesn't. Thank you.